Hello, and welcome back to Dragonfire Designs. Now today, we're going to be working on a cosplay prop that every Han Solo cosplayer absolutely needs. Now you can have all the rest of the outfit. You can get the vest, the shirt, you can even have the proper pants with the blood stripes, but no Han Solo costume is complete without his famous DL-44 blaster. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to take this, and hopefully with a little bit of paint and a little bit of effort, we're going to make it into a usable cosplay prop. Now as you can see here, we are starting with a Rubies plastic Han Solo blaster pistol. Now these can be found online and in some costume shops for relatively cheap. I believe I picked this one up off the internet. It was probably no more than $8 or $9. So they are readily available, very affordable, and a great option if you don't want to drop a whole bunch of money on a replica Mauser or even a real broom-handled Mauser to convert. So let's go ahead and take this out of the package and see what we've got. So right out of the gate, I can see we've got a few issues that we're going to need to work on. On the plus side though, when you put batteries in this, it makes a completely inaccurate blaster sound. Gotta love it. But let's take a look here. Some screw holes that we're going to want to fill with putty. I'm going to want to sand the surface lightly to get it a little bit easier for paint to adhere. Accuracy, you know, for taking photos at a convention, I'd say this is going to be pretty darn good. We're going to want to drill out that tip and the holes here in the flash suppressor. So I think that's what we'll start with. We're going to start drilling that out, get the surface sanded, fill some of our screw holes, and then we'll move on to paint applications after we do that. So we'll take care of that first. Now I've gone ahead and cut out the front of the barrel. I used a Dremel with a drum sanding bit. And I'm just going to clean that up a little bit with sandpaper. And next, to drill these little holes in the suppressor out, I will get a hand drill and just go ahead and do those with a simple drill bit that matches the diameter of those. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that next. Okay, we've got those drilled out. Now I'm going to move on to giving the surface a little bit of a spot sanding to make it a little bit easier for paint to adhere. So now at this point, I've sanded off an area here that had some of the raised lettering that said Rubies costuming, and there was the Lucasfilm copyright data, and made in China, that sort of stuff. Sanded that off. Also on this side they had that as well. Went ahead and removed that. And what we're going to do next is we are going to use a 2-part plumber's epoxy to fill some of these holes. And all this is it's literally, as the name implies, it's a 2-part epoxy. Take off a bit that you need. Now here's a little trick that I do. Once you knead these two pieces, you'll see there's a gray and a white. When those two components are kneaded together, mixed, it'll start the process of this hardening. And one thing I've learned from my days of model building and doing vinyl model kits, in order to hide seams, you can use plumber's epoxy, and you can even build up detail with this and sculpt it while it's still setting. But you can smooth it with, of all things, Vicks Vapor Rub. It helps to give you a really clean, smooth surface to this as it's setting up. So we're just going to go ahead, put that in, and hide some of these screw holes. That's just going to make it look a little bit more accurate. Now you see I'm taking the Vicks Vapor Rub, and I just smooth over the epoxy. And if you do this right, you won't even need to sand where you've put the epoxy, thanks to the Vicks sort of breaking it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Now, what I'm doing right now is probably a little bit of an excessive over-the-top detail, but that's just how I like to do things. I've noticed that in looking at photos of really high-end replicas, that use an actual scope. I believe it's like a Bushnell scope. Anyways, the metal of the scope is machined, and you can see the, I don't know, I guess you would call it the machining lines run across the metal this way. So I'm just sanding and breaking the surface and kind of putting a little bit of that texture into the plastic, running in that direction. Now I don't know if that's going to ultimately show up after I've painted it, but I figured since I wanted to give the surface a little bit of a sanding to make it easier for paint to stick, I would at least give that a shot. And if it ends up working out that it looks like machined metal, then all the better. Now, one thing that I did note while I was looking at photos, on the grips there is a brass, I don't know, I guess you would call it a set screw, some type of screw that holds the wooden grips down on the Mauser, and that is conspicuously missing from this. So I went ahead and drilled out a spot for where that is supposed to go on an actual set of the wooden broom handle Mauser grips, and I'm going to look through some of my spares box and see if I can't find something that looks close enough to that detail that I can glue in place to simulate that. Now my solution came by way of a pop rivet head that I just cut the back off, glued that in from behind, and that is going to look just fine. Okay, now that we've got the pistol completely covered in black, just a simple flat black paint, we're going to go ahead and work on the muzzle here. We're going to dry brush this in silver, pick out the details. We'll do that real quick. Now, dry brushing is a very simple technique. You get a little bit of paint loaded on your brush, you wipe it off to where it's almost dry, and then you just lightly work it over the detail. And in this case, we're going to go against the grain of the detail so that it picks up just on the high spots. Sometimes it takes a little while to build it up to the intensity that you want. And since we're doing this muzzle here that's going to be really old and look like it's been used and through a lot, we're going to do a couple passes with the silver, and then we're probably going to go through and do a few passes to simulate a little bit of rust and wear. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. Now here you see we've made it look like the metal is chipped through and worn down, so you can see the bare metal underneath. And I've even gone ahead and added, believe it or not, orange of all colors. When you add orange on top of a dark silver, just very, very lightly, you get a little bit of rust tone to it. So I'm liking how that looks so far. Now we're going to go ahead and add the brown to the wooden grips. Now here we have the grips all painted. Got a little bit of brass tone to that fastener. I'll get in closer there. Now that looks like a pretty usable Han Solo DL-44 blaster. Let's take a look at some side-by-side images with the before and the after. Well, and there we have it. Finished, painted, and ready to go in less than 2 hours. Quick, simple, and easy way to transform a cheap $8 Rubies toy into a useful cosplay prop. Hopefully this inspires you to do a little of your own painting and your own conversions. I'd love to see what kind of props and different projects you guys are working on, so please by all means leave any photos in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.